Hi, I'm Steve Phelps, and this is Cars and Culture with Jason Stein.
Steve, what a pleasure to have you on the show. It is an honor. You have a lot going on this month, but you made some time for us. Thank you.
It's my pleasure, Jason. Glad to be here joining with you.
You've got a lot coming up that we're going to talk about, but I want to begin with the fact that you're unbelievably nearly 3.5 years into your tenure. You must kind of shake your head and go, wow, where did those 3.5 years go?
Yeah, it's interesting. On the one hand, it seems like it's been very short. But if you actually think back to really what's happened during that time, kind of the coming together of International Speedway Corporation, which is a public company that owned 12 racetracks, and NASCAR. The pandemic, 2020 was a blur. Then 2021, and now as we're heading into our 22 season, it's been incredibly rewarding. It's gone very quickly, but a lot has happened in that 3.5 years, and I'm excited about where we are today.
More than you could have ever imagined back to September of 2018. But let me ask you what you think you learned the most as NASCAR's president.
I think for me, I'm very fortunate to be in the position I'm in. I love my job. I've got the best job in the world. I know that sounds super cliche, but I love NASCAR racing. I love racing, overall, but I'm a huge NASCAR fan. I have been for a long time. I work for two owners, Jim France and Lisa France Kennedy, and they're great people. They allow me to do my portion of my job and try to lead this sport, and they do their whatever they're doing importantly as well to lead the sport also. But it's there's been so many different things. I do think the pandemic in particular, the stoppage that we had for 71 days was a very profound moment for our sport. And then being the first sport back, I think was really critical for not just our sport, I think, but for the nation, frankly, because we had to get some normalcy back into the system. And I think that's exactly what we were able to do. And then really in June of 2020, the banning the Confederate flag and the social justice stance that the sport took, probably a little bit surprising for people. So again, as I think back on what that is and lessons learned, I think it really comes down to our industry coming together, collaborating, solving for something that a lot of people didn't know could be solved for. I know that sounds a bit dramatic, but I think it's true. It was a complete unknown about getting back to racing with fans, and ultimately getting, a nation as a whole getting back on its feet. So that, to me, when I think about our industry, when things are at their most difficult, that's really when our industry does the best, in my opinion.
There was a lot of rallying together, and you said that it took an industry coming together to make all these changes, all these positive changes really happen. It took race teams, broadcast partners, sponsors, tracks that you own, tracks that you didn't own, that made for an opportunity to grow out of obviously an incredibly difficult, unprecedented situation, but also to meet some of your growth goals that would have layered on top of that. Yeah. Why did that happen? This has been a sport that has not necessarily been all rowing in the same direction at the same time, but now it is.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. I'm not sure why that is, but again, as I said, I think it's when things are hard for our sport, we do really, really well together. And it's almost like a family coming together in a crisis. We were in a crisis. This is our family. This is our community. And we came together as one. I'm completely honest, when things are going really, really well, we'll figure out how to bicker and not come together. And that's where we are today, frankly, right? We are in a situation where we have grown for the last 3 years. Attendance is up. Our ratings have stabilized, which is incredible based on HUT level declines and other headwinds, and other sports, frankly, are struggling. with viewership, and we're not. And I think motorsports in general is not, and that's a great thing for all of us, because for a decade, most motorsports were in decline, including NASCAR. And then starting in 19, we've turned it around, and it feels good. But I think this idea of an industry coming together to solve for a very difficult problem, which was, can you get back to racing or not, right? Was something that we desperately needed to do as an industry, right? Because, from a team perspective, they have sponsor pressures, right? So you don't race, I'm not going to sponsor you.
Mm-hmm.
Or from a media partner standpoint, a broadcast standpoint, if we don't race, they're not going to pay us. And then what does it do to your overall fan base, right? It's like, hey, listen, I didn't have NASCAR for a year. I guess I don't need it. I think being the first sport back said something. And I felt, I heard from a lot of other commissioners of sports, and they were all genuinely interested in us going first and getting back.
I bet they were.
I think they were. It was good for them, but it was also like, all right, let's have those guinea pigs go ahead and see if they can make a go of this. And but you could feel the genuine, kind of care that the other sports were looking at us and saying, we want you to succeed, right? And so we got back first, and then the PGA Tour got up and running, and then baseball figured out what a shortened season was going to look like, the NHL, the NBA, and it was hard. I mean, we had some significant advantages to our sport, right? We're outdoors. We have built-in PPE, with fire suits and head socks and helmets and the rest, right? The driver's encased in, into a metal box. It's easier for us, frankly. It just is. We're not running around in shorts and t-shirts, sweating on each other and banging into each other. We bang into each other, but the vehicles do that, not the athletes. Right. So I think that was helpful for us, and again, somewhat self-effacing. One of the most difficult things as I look back at it really was just the unknown, right? Were we going to be welcomed by our communities where the racetracks are, the governors, the health and safety protocol people, or whomever? Would we get the yeses that we needed? And I would say in 2020, I spoke to more governors in 2020 than I had in my entire life. It was good to take a break from speaking to them. They're all very different, and
became part of the political landscape.
It was pretty wild. But I think the good news is, once we were able to, Governor McMaster in South Carolina was the first to say yes, right? And that was helpful. You get one yes, then we got a second and a third and a fourth. And with the exception of a state or two, we were able to run a complete schedule, right? We ran a full schedule for sure, right? 36 races, said we're going to do 36. We had 36. We had some venue changes. We weren't able to run at Sonoma. We weren't able to run at Watkins Glen, but we pivoted to places where we could run, right? Because it was important to get our season in. And in 2020, other than the NFL, no other sport, major sport anyway, completed a full season, and we did. And I think that was important for us. And it showed that we could do something that other people didn't think we could do, frankly. And I think that's really what it is. The perception of NASCAR is we were staid, we're Southern, we're redneck, we're older, we're white. And we broke a ton of those stereotypes and continue to do that, importantly, as we headed into 21 and frankly into this 22 season. How people perceive our sport is changing, right? And so when I talk to the industry, I tell the industry, we collectively need to be bold in our thinking. We need to have bold schedules. We need to do things that others don't expect that we can do. And I think we've done that, frankly. So, as we think about heading into this weekend at the Coliseum, the Clash at the Coliseum,
mm-hmm.
We're going to have 60,000 people, and we paved a track inside a 100-year-old historic venue. And it's going to be awesome. It's going to be truly epic. And we're going to have entertainment. It'll be unlike a show that we've ever had. And that will change perception. of what NASCAR, who NASCAR is and what NASCAR can achieve.
And NASCAR in LA going after one of the toughest fan bases or base of crowds that you could possibly go after, because, if only because there's so many competing interests. And
Yeah,
here comes
yeah.
NASCAR into Southern California.
Well, it's interesting. I had a conversation when we announced this and had the first conversation with Eric Shanks, who's the head of Fox Sports. And Eric, who lives in Los Angeles, Fox is based in Los Angeles. And he was over the moon. He's like, all of us jaded, Los Angelinos will be thrilled that you're coming to town. And this is going to be something unique and different. And we are going to need to go. And so you look at from Lachlan Murdoch on down, they're all coming to this event. This is a big deal. And it's important for our sport. And what amazing pre-promotion, 6 hours on Big Fox on the 6th of February, 2 weeks before the Daytona 500, and all the pre-promotion they're doing, that they've done in all the playoff games. It's huge for us.
I want to go back to one thing you said about COVID. Were you worried that no one would come back?
I think it was a big concern of ours as we did our budgeting in 2020 was a little bit different because we were restricted. So the first time we were able to have a full venue was in Nashville in 2021, in June of 2021. And it was great to see a full venue, a sold out crowd. It was weird though. I went to the Darlington races and in all the races where we didn't have fans. Then we welcomed fans back in limited capacity. I wasn't concerned that we could sell the limited capacity. My bigger concern was, all right, when we open it back up, what are we going to see?
Right.
And I'm pleased to say, with the exception of maybe 2 venues, once we started, allowed for it to go back to full capacity, starting in Nashville, every other facility, 2019 to 2021, we sold more tickets to.
Yeah.
And that's what we're seeing. That's what we're seeing in 2022. And we sold out the Daytona 500 faster this year than we've had in the modern era of the Daytona 500. We did it in mid-January. There's not a grandstand seat available. There's no camping available. There's nothing left. So we've got some seats to sell in the Camping World Truck Series and Xfinity Series, but those are selling incredibly well too. So we're having a moment, and the fans, there's some pent up demand here for sure. But I think it also speaks to the changes in the sport and the success that we're having. So the people, when you come to a racetrack, there are a lot of families with children. There are a lot of, teens and 20 somethings. There are a lot of diverse fans who are coming to the racetrack, many for the first time. I mean, you look at the Clash, 70% of the tickets sold to the Clash are first time attendees at a NASCAR event. That's exactly what we want. Talking about a very cool sampling opportunity. So you've got over 40 million first time fans at a racetrack.
And that takes me back, Steve, to the days of, Boy Wonder and Jeff Gordon and the Brickyard 400 inauguration and kind of that early 2000s time period, going back about 20 years when we saw the same thing happen. But that wasn't the case for the previous decade.
Sure.
And leading up to about 2018 or so. But yep. you said in 2019, or as you were going into 2019, pre-COVID, you said, I do believe as we head into that year that our best days are ahead. And there had been challenges and headwinds. Why did you think that the best days could be ahead?
I think for me, when I made that statement, I'm sure there are a lot of people that snickered, frankly. And I won't go back and say I told you so, but they are ahead. And I believe we're going to have growth that is going to be unrivaled again. I really believe that to be true. But you think back to 2018, what happened in 2018, 17, 16, 15? You had 5 or 6 of your most popular drivers all retired.
Mm-hmm.
And, including Dale Jr. in 2018, Jeff Gordon, Tony Stewart, Carl Edwards, Danica Patrick.
Icons.
Icons
to that point.
It's some first ballot Hall of Famers, other just, incredibly popular. But I knew that we had plans in place that would allow for slow, controlled growth in 2019. So our ratings were up 3% in 2019. Attendance came back from 2018, which was a surprise to me. Not at all our venues, but you could see the growth starting to happen. And what we did is we brought the industry back together and had the industry believe in itself. I think, the appointment of Jim France as the chairman and CEO, I think that did a lot for our industry, because everyone understands that the founder's son is a massive motorsports fan, and there's no place he'd rather be than at a racetrack. I think that really fueled optimism in the sport, and the sport believed in itself for the first time in a long time. And then we put plans into place, and it was important for us, frankly, to kind of lead this industry from the front. We needed to show the industry that we were willing to do this, take the steps necessary in order to have us grow again, which is what we did. We poured gas on the fire because of the pandemic. And it's an odd thing to think about. That first Monday after we had shut down, in Atlanta, in mid-March, that first Monday back, I brought my senior team together here in Daytona Beach. And I said, we have an opportunity here. The first opportunity is to be the first sport back. But the second opportunity is really to steal share from other sports and entertainment properties, which is exactly what we did. I mean, you consider last year, our share was up 12% on television. Okay, that's working. Now, I had no idea what was to come in 2020 after I made that statement, but putting our plans together, the architecture to come back to racing, and all the steps that followed there, while being incredibly nimble. I think Ben Kennedy and team put together like 87 different schedules. We built 87 different
87
ones.
iterations.
Of iterations of what it was. And that is, you had to stay nimble, right? And then the Confederate flag ban and the social justice things that we went through, all while trying to navigate COVID, really helped an industry feel better about itself. And then as we headed into 2021, still some questions about attendance, still some questions about limited capacity. And we were able to overcome those. And I would say last year was a very important year for us to keep that momentum. There are two words that I use that we just didn't have, frankly, before the pandemic, which were relevance and reputation, a strong reputation. We just didn't have them. And after 2020, that's something that we had. By the time we were the end of 2020, we finished our season, sponsors, media partners, the media itself, all the industry, all feeling like NASCAR went to a different plane. And I think that was important for us. And we were able to continue that momentum in 2021. And then as we head into 2022, the clash is incredible, right? And going to St. Louis, the schedule changes we made last year, they all worked. Road America, the sellout, 100,000 people or whatever the number actually was. That
Circuit of the Americas in Austin.
Circuit of the Americas, Bristol Dirt. These were important changes for our sport and changes, Indy Road Course. They're just, those were things that changed the perception of NASCAR being bold. And I can't think of something more bold than what we're doing at the Clash. And it's taken, again, an industry coming together. And the other bold play, frankly, is the next gen car itself. That's a bold play, right? We get that wrong, supply chain issues, whatever it is, we're in trouble. I mean, we are in trouble. We are all in on the next gen car. It is the future of our series, and what it will do from a race fan perspective, from an OEM perspective, from a team perspective, from a team ownership perspective. I mean, Michael Jordan and Denny Hamlin, Justin Marks and Pitbull do not become team owners if we don't do two things. We don't take the stance on social justice and the banning the Confederate flag would not happen, and the next gen car. They had to see that you can get past an alliance where you are reliant on that alliance partner to build your cars, frankly. And now it's a different story. You can build your cars yourself. The two of us could build it. Well, I couldn't because I'm not
I join
good.
you. I'm not there either.
I can't build a car, but and it's a different world. And that's why, and the move up of Maury Gallagher from the Camping World Truck Series up to the Cup Series and the alliance in the relationship with Petty, and then Matt Collett going from the Xfinity Series up to the Cup Series. These are we're at a very important but very bright time with respect to team ownership, which is what we want to do. We want to make sure that our fan base continues to refresh. There was some concern about future ownership. Would new owners want to come? And that question is being answered emphatically yes.
Well, there's been so much stability on the ownership side, from the Gibbses to the Hendricks to the Penske's. And now you just rattled off an all-star list of, performers, if you will, celebrities from various corners of the entertainment world. So what does it say to you, beyond the fact that they believe in NASCAR, but what does it say to you that they want to be involved in NASCAR?
Well, I think it's incredibly rewarding. I think people didn't realize what a massive fan Michael Jordan is of NASCAR. Grew up with it with his dad in North Carolina. I mean, he's all in. I've had the good fortune to go to a basketball game with him, and I've had the good fortune of being with him, not for an entire race, obviously, because of responsibilities I would have in a race. He is all in on NASCAR. And interestingly enough, he had to choose between the 75th anniversary celebration of the NBA All-Star Game and being obviously the all-time team is probably the greatest player that ever lived in the NBA. And the NBA All-Star Game is February 20th. The Daytona 500 is February 20th. I wouldn't have brought this up if I didn't know the answer is yes, he's coming to the Daytona 500 and he's going to miss the NBA All-Star Game.
Wow, remarkable.
And I just think it speaks to the importance of that to him. But I think it's gratifying, right? And the fact that I've been able to say Michael Jordan and Pitbull about 5,000 times since they've been announced, in September of 2020 for Michael, and then I think Pitbull was probably in December. And Pitbull's an interesting one as well. He's performing this weekend at the Clash, and he loves himself some NASCAR. And it's not one of those, and obviously Michael Jordan not either, because Michael is the majority owner with Denny, and Pitbull's a minority owner. In a lot of sports, you'll have, this guy's a minority owner. Yeah, he owns 1%. Pitbull put money in, and he is a legitimate minority owner with Justin Marks. And I think that's important, right? It's one thing to do, hey, we're going to do a marketing promotional thing and use celebrities to kind of grow our team, grow our sport. These folks are legitimately interested in getting in, and there are other celebrities that I'm not at liberty to talk about, and sports figures who are going to be owners in NASCAR. They're going to. That was
my next question. Organically now, is that not going to lead to even more momentum as it relates to owners who would be unconventional for NASCAR?
I believe that to be true. And I think if you look at, we have a system in place, might not be familiar with everyone. It's called a charter system. And essentially the charters, we only have them in our top series, our NASCAR Cup series, but the charters allow for guaranteed entry into, into a race. And then a portion of that is the money is guaranteed for them, right? And a portion you have to earn it, right? Which is the way it should be, based on where you finish. But what I'll call the charter values, or as some people would call them, the franchise values, are going up at extraordinary rates, which means that the supply is shorter than the demand. So demand for NASCAR ownership is at an all-time high. And I think it speaks volumes to where the sport is today, where it's going, the importance of the next gen car, and really a confidence level that the sport is going to continue to grow, which I believe it's going to.
Franchise values, you would not have said increasing at a rapid pace in the same sentence with a NASCAR team previously. It's kind of like your old days in the NFL, those skyrocketing prices for teams.
Sure. No, I agree. And I think the difference here is that our ownership structure is different, right? So teams are independent from NASCAR. Tracks, with the exception of the tracks that we own through our merger, are independent. So Speedway Motorsports, independent. And that worked for this sport for over 70 years. But this collaborative nature, we need to act as a league, right? Because if we don't, and we act as disparate groups, you're not going to optimize the growth. Everyone wins with the optimizing of the sport, right? The growth of the sport. And I'm not just talking about financials. It has to do with being in the conversation in media circles, in business circles. And we had lost that. I think, frankly, there's a trade magazine called Sports Business Journal, which is kind of the big deal in the sports business. And every year they would have a reader survey about sports that were a buy stock and sports that were a sell stock. If it was a buy stock, we'd always be last. If it was a sell stock, we'd always be first. And that's incredibly discouraging for anyone who works in this industry, particularly people that are working their butt off in order to grow the sport. So we won Sports Business Journal's League of the Year for 2021. It was announced, I think, in June of 2020, so in June of 2021. And, I was fortunate enough to be able to speak on behalf of our sport and use that, right? And I said, the thing that's most gratifying is this industry recognized what happened in NASCAR in 2020 and thought so much of it that we were at the top of the buy list for the first time ever. And we are a buy stock. And that feels good. It's interesting because many of the same people with the plans in place were here when we were declining, right? Including myself. And talking about, getting younger and more diverse is a great objective. It's far more difficult to do, but the changes that we've made have allowed us to do just that. We're getting younger and more diverse. It's what every brand wants, frankly. And right now we have it, and we need to make sure that we continue to invest as an organization and as a sport in order to continue to fuel and nurture that growth.
Since NASCAR's humble beginnings, it's always been the sport of the people. It embraced a culture of the everyman, if you will. And NASCAR matured and recognized that corporate America wanted access to the American consumer and did it all, did all of that to allow it to groom and basically deliver what it promised to corporate America. But that said, over the past half decade, there's been a bit of a schism between the so-called traditional NASCAR fans and the new fans, the fans that you just talked about who will be joining. You understand that need to bring America together, and whether it was banning the stars and bars flag from the infields, or you were also at the epicenter of the divisive "Let's Go Brandon" movement. And I think you've done a lot to distance yourself from those things. But talk about that balance, if you could. How do you satisfy what has been part of the NASCAR traditional fabric and stepping into the 21st century? How do you drag others into the sport while keeping those who've been with you for a long time?
So I think I actually don't think it's as difficult as people make it out to be. I really don't. Listen, we lost some fans for sure. When we banned the Confederate flag, some of the other more aggressive things that we've done in social justice. But to me, the majority of NASCAR fans really are about welcoming people to the sport that they love. And we have great fans like that. That's who our fans are. And so regardless of whether you're a first-time fan going to a racetrack or you've been going for 50 years, what are you looking for? To me, you're looking for great racing, right? And I think we've delivered against the promise of great racing in 2021. I think it's arguably the best season we've ever had from a competition standpoint.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
If I'm a longtime fan, that's exactly what I want. If I am a fan, we want to serve that fan, longtime fan, new fan, in different ways. So if I know through our, 20 million people in our database, if I know that Jason Stein is a Chase Elliott fan, I'm going to serve you content, Jason, that is specific to you, right? We can serve that fan in so many different ways. So if my promise the promise that we make to our existing fans is we're going to have close competitive side-by-side racing, which is what you love. We are going to bring this sport to you and provide access that, frankly, for 2 years we weren't able to do, but we're going to do that when you come back to the racetrack. Whatever you believe that's important for you as a fan, that's where we want to be. And if you're a new fan, we're going to serve you differently, right? We're going to tell you what you should expect when you come to the racetrack, what you should know, try to help you with, NASCAR 101 type things to help your fandom and help your fandom grow. We're going to have outreach to new folks, and then we're going to nurture the longtime fans that we have. So I don't think those things are mutually exclusive. I believe you can serve new and old fans differently, but you can serve them all, and you don't have to pit one against the other. You don't have to pick one versus the other, because we want to keep every longtime fan that we've had that have been loyal to us, that love this sport, who are tremendous brand ambassadors for all the generations of people that they've brought to the racetrack. And we also want to serve this new fan. And, frankly, the only time those two groups are going to meet is at the racetrack. And I think that's a great thing. And the racetrack needs to be a melting pot of our fans, which I think is ultimately will be reflective of America. And that's exactly what we want as well. That's the goal.
New fans and possibly some new manufacturers. You said late last year that that you feel that NASCAR is an attractive place for OEMs to come into the sport, and you've made no bones about the fact that you want to have a new OEM in the sport. Making progress there?
I would say we're making some progress. Again, nothing to report at this particular point, but lots of discussions. And I think, some in various stages, frankly. It's not just one. We've engaged with a few different OEs that, frankly, for a long time, we found it difficult to have the conversations because the OEs were like, I'm not sure NASCAR is really where we want to invest our money at this particular point, because they didn't see what the vision was for the growth of the sport, or they didn't actually see the growth of the sport. Now that's different. And I think a lot of the changes that we're making, the next gen car, what the new power plant might look like. Are we looking at, different, fuels that potentially could be greener fuels? The answer is, of course, we're going to look at that. All those things combined create an opportunity for us to look at a new OEM or two in the sport. And I think we're going to get there. And my hope is, this year that we'll make an announcement, and when that OE starts racing, we'll have to see, but lots of discussions, and I'd say lots of positive discussions in that area.
The next gen car, lots of conversation about that. What's your greatest hope, and perhaps what's your greatest concern when releasing a whole cloth change to those mechanical performers?
Um, well, my biggest concern is that we wouldn't have cars ready, right? Because of supply chain issues. That didn't come to fruition. So that part's at least a positive thing. You know, we all as an industry want to get through the class, get through Daytona and the West Coast swing and take stock of where everyone is from from an inventory standpoint. What I will say is, much like we did in the pandemic, coming together as a sport, this sport came together for the next gen car. So drivers had concerns about safety, which we were able to alleviate. Drivers had concern about heat in the car. We were able to alleviate those concerns. Drivers were concerned, or others concerned, about the steering and the steering column. We were able to solve for that as well. And then it really is about the drivability of the car, where we're going to put on competitive shows. And I think if you ask the industry today versus where we were back in June, it has been a significant change. I will say this: when we race it at the Coliseum with this next gen car will be tested more than any previous iteration of car combined. There have been more laps run, more tests, more collaboration with race teams, OEMs, everyone, right? And that's gratifying to me. That's really what this, as I said, that's what this industry does well. Are we going to have to tweak on the car from a drivability standpoint as we go to, out to Southern California, particularly at Auto Club, then Vegas, and then Phoenix? Yeah, we're going to have to. But it's no different than the car that we currently have, frankly. If we're not seeing the race we want, we work with our teams and our OEs to try to figure out, okay, what changes can we make? Can we tweak on this that make the racing better? Because that's something that is the promise that NASCAR makes to our race fans. If it's not good, we're going to figure out how to make it good. And I think we've done a really good job of that, frankly, over the last few years.
Do you feel like an expectant father?
I do. And you know what? There's certainly people that are that have worked diligently, and as this is their baby. I'm not that one, but I am incredibly eager to see it on the track. I mean, Jason, you've seen the car. It's beautiful, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the technology in the car, the relevance in the car. It is a stock car. Now, we can't buy that car in the showroom, but we can buy the pieces and parts and put it together. The thing about the old car, listen, I thought the old car looked good, right? The racing was fantastic. The engineering on that car was unbelievable, but the technology was 5 decades old. I mean, independent rear suspension, what? I mean, it's a different thing. Rack and pinion steering. It's what's in this car makes it relevant, right? And the technology advances that we're going to have, and then how we ultimately serve the fan, either from a data standpoint, a camera standpoint. We had some supply chain issues. We were hoping to have some of those advances to the fans when we went to the Clash, but ran into supply chain issues, and so some of those things are going to have to wait. But this is a promise to the fans for a return to stock car racing, and I think the styling of the car. I mean, it's like, hey, we should take a Camaro and a Mustang and a Camry and soup them up and make them look really cool. Oh, that's what we did. And that's what the fans are going to get. And because no disrespect to the car of tomorrow, or, the Gen 6 car, the Gen 6 car certainly brought it back closer, at least from a styling perspective, but nothing like this. I mean, it's not even close. And I do think the changes that we will see in what this does on road courses is going to be unbelievable, right? I think short tracks are going to be believable. Super speedway, like here in Daytona, it's always fantastic, right? So the biggest question is, how is it going to be on the intermediate tracks? And I think if the engineers are right, and it's going to take some tweaking probably, but if the engineers are right, the dirty air bubble that exists behind the old car should be reduced. And that's what the simulations say is going to happen. If that's the case, with a composite body where they can really bang and beat on each other without worrying about cutting a tire, and more side by side, more passes for the lead, more passes throughout the field, I think that's a pretty good promise to our race fans, and that's what they expect of this car. And probably the biggest concern I have is, don't judge by the first race, right? We have no idea what's going to happen. Listen, at the Clash, no one knows what's going to happen either. But as it relates to an aero sensitive track with a 670 horsepower engine, if we need to tweak on it, we tweak on it. Because likely, like any new introduction of a car, one race team is going to hit on it and others are going to miss. But our teams are so good at narrowing that gap so quickly. It's going to be phenomenal.
I don't know, Steve, you're talking about composites and rack and pinion steering. I think you definitely could have a pretty good spot for yourself in a garage at some point. Just a couple more things. Marketing and promotion. You once said that you need to make sure that the marketing and promotion is as strong as it can be. You need to make sure that you can drive storylines. There's a great storyline that's being told on a regular basis on Netflix about Formula One. Could NASCAR benefit from a Drive to Survive like series?
Well, there's no question. So let me, I'm actually not so sure I'm supposed to share any of this. What I would say is there is a Netflix show that's coming out. The Netflix show is about Bubba Wallace, and a look back at the 2020 season and then Bubba Wallace's 2021 season. I'm supposed to share when that is going to debut, but it's going to be very soon. So that's great. There's another show that has already started filming. And that
you're talking to NBC Entertainment as well, right?
Pardon?
And you're also talking to NBC Entertainment.
That's exactly right. So, okay, since that's out there, yes. And so NBC Entertainment is filming a show right now. They've already started doing it. That will be a Drive for Survive type show. And I think the cool thing is that for Drive to Survive, you are essentially a season behind. What NBC is going to do is they're going to get the footage, release it at a time, probably around playoff times, or don't hold me on the timing, that ultimately is going to catch up when we get to the end of the season, which is really cool. So you will finish the season and finish the series at the same time. And yes, I think we can benefit from it. There's no question that F1 has benefited from the Netflix show, both here in the States as well as globally. We get a lot of characters in our sport, and a lot of storylines, a lot of behind the scenes, a lot of drama. I think it's going to be compelling, a compelling series. And I haven't seen, the Bubba Wallace, the episodes with Bubba, but I'm told it's really good.
And an unvarnished look at the sport, which is effectively what Drive to Survive does with Formula One. They've pulled the curtain back so every fan can see what's out there. We've had Sean Bratches on this program explaining the gestation of that whole program. It really drew new fans in as much as it did current fans. So that's just layering into your approach anyway, and telling, after all, great stories.
That's right.
Yeah.
No question. I'm excited about what it can do for us, because again, as you're thinking about, we want to expose this sport to as many people as we can that will say, you know what, I'll sample NASCAR because it's not what I thought it was. or I'll sample NASCAR because there's a buzz about it, or there's a new relevance, or, hey, I hear good things about the direction that NASCAR is going. That's all we can ask is to ask people to sample us. It's then our job to make sure that what they're sampling is as good as it can be. And I think the next gen car will help us with that for sure. But it's also, as I look outside my window here and look at Daytona International Speedway, we need to make sure that our racetracks, both the ones that we own and the ones that we don't own, are giving these fans who have been longtime fans or first-time fans coming to a racetrack, given the best experience they can have. And that experience isn't just what happens on the racetrack. It's what happens before the race. It's what happens during the race. It's what happens after the race. Kind of what is the driveway to driveway experience that these folks are going to get. And it's important for us to deliver against that. We are going to spend more money marketing and promoting this sport than we ever have. And we're asking the other tracks to do the same thing. And if our expectation is if we're going to do it, well, they're going to do it too. And that includes like every facility that we own is going to be installed with Wi-Fi, because there's nothing more frustrating going to a great event, taking video, taking pictures, posting them and having them not go, right? They're just sitting there. That's frustrating. That's not, and people say it used to be, oh, the young people can't go anywhere without their phone. It's not just young people, it's 80-year-old people who are coming that, I'm going to put something on Facebook, right? Or I'm going to send something to my grandson or whatever. This is a really cool event, or the grandson sending it to his grandparents. That's what we need to do. And so making investment spending into the sport to make sure that the guests are having the best experience they can is our responsibility.
What does success look like to you if we sit and talk here a year from now? What will you have wanted to accomplish on your to-do list?
A flawless execution of the next gen car. We are, assuming we don't get hammered with weather around the 500 or Bristol dirt on Easter Sunday night. We were impacted by rain. 25% of our network windows, we had rain, including the Daytona 500, which finished at 12:15, 12:20 in the morning. Tough to get a rating on a Sunday night when you're finishing at 12:20. With that said, I would say double-digit share increases again this year, and probably mid-single digit rating increases, which means as a sport, since 2018, we will be the only sport that will be flat to up over a 4-year period. And the only one that even gets close is the behemoth that is the NFL. Every other sport is in a different, at least major sports, stick and ball sports. So, I mean, you look at one series that we own, IMSA and ARCA both were up in ratings last year significantly, particularly IMSA. IndyCar, F1, all with rating increases. And it goes back to my statement about what is happening in motorsports in this country. It's gratifying. And we're about, if you look at share, we're about, with our series, about 80, a little over 80% of all the racing in this country, our series that we own, including our biggest series, the NASCAR Cup Series. That's good for us. Other things, as we're looking back, I think at every facility, our goal should be a year over year increase or sellouts at our facilities. I don't think that's an unrealistic expectation. And if we don't, we need to take a hard look about whether we're going to go back to that facility. We do. We need to deliver for our industry, right? Sponsors and broadcast partners. When you have full grandstands, everyone feels good. There's an energy and a buzz. And when you don't, it feels flat. So again, continued gains on that. And then lastly, I would say continued reputation and relevance in the sport. We feel it, right? And our current media partners feel it. I'm sure there'll be a lot of inquiries from those outside of our current media partners that would want to have discussions with NASCAR. Now we can't have those, obviously. We've got two incredible media partners in Fox and NBC, and what they've done for us over the last 2 years is extraordinary. Just look at what Fox has done from a promotion standpoint around the Clash. I mean, every time you turn on a Fox sporting event, they're talking about the Clash.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
Which is great. And what kind of partner is NBC? NBC has the Super Bowl this year, and they're going to do it like 2 or 3 minute segment on what is going to happen at the Coliseum as a look to their portion of the season, which is not until the end of June.
Mm-hmm.
That's what kind of great partner NBC is. We are very, very fortunate to have just 2 world-class media partners.
Well, Steve, finally, you're a long way from Catamount Speedway, hanging with your dad, watching all that New England short track, watching some of those New England short track legends. What would your dad say about where you are today?
I lost my dad when I was 24, so it's been a long time. My dad didn't know I worked at the NFL. My dad didn't know I got married, had 4 children. My dad didn't know I worked at NASCAR. I didn't get to experience those things with him. Now, do I believe that my dad is looking down and smiling? I do. And I know he'd be super proud. And I'm super humbled by what the opportunity is here. And, as a 5-year-old going to Catamount Speedway with my brother and my dad, I couldn't even imagine what it is. I do remember the excitement of that first race I went to, though. And that is, I remember that when I go to our racetracks and I watch NASCAR racing and I see a flyover, the national anthem, or that first, time when the drivers get up to speed to take the green flag, all of it brings back just really fond memories of what it means to go to go to a NASCAR race. And to me, I never tire of that. And that's why I'm super fortunate. I'll have the good fortune to work, probably 60 days straight, heading into the 500 or the Clash and then into the 500. I'm just so blessed to be able to do that. And there are millions and millions and millions, tens of millions of race fans that would switch with me and other people as well and say, well, that guy's lucky to be doing what he's doing. Some knucklehead redneck from Vermont. So I will.
An economics major at UVM. And a track athlete too, by the way.
Yeah, that's a long time ago.
Isn't it appropriate that track athletes in charge of tracks now?
Well, I actually thought about that when you think about the Clash, and it's a quarter mile in length. Getting those USC track athletes out there to run a few laps would be a kind of a cool deal.
800 meter, 1 minute and 53 seconds, 0.42 is what you did. That's what my research says. So
that's what it says.
So I think the what you'll see in the Coliseum will be equally as entertaining. And I know Father Phelps would be very proud of you, Steve.
Thank you.
Thank you for being on the program. I really appreciate it.
It was my pleasure. Enjoyed our discussion, and I hope to see you at a racetrack soon.
We'll see you at Daytona.
All right, Jason. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
The automobile is one of the most important inventions that revolutionized the modern world. In America, the rich history of car culture runs deep as technology continues to shape the future of the industry. Jason Stein,
former publisher of Automotive News,
is here to share the stories of people passionate about cars, from industry leaders and innovators to car-obsessed celebrities. Buckle up as Jason takes you inside the boardroom, onto the track, and around the bend on Cars and Culture on SiriusXM Business Radio.